Ты включил камеру тоже?
Нет, тебя не видят.
А почему там говорит что-то?
Okay. Okay, again, I'll wait another minute, see if anyone else. I wanted to, we did look at this last time, but I wanted to, let's fix this here.
Что это такое?
Ну, какая-то картинка. Тут прочитать там же невозможно.
Это он, наверное, показывает, да?
I'm not sure who's here at Simaz, but if you could please mute. Appreciate that. Thank you.
I took care of that.
Oh, okay. And Ed, you want to start the recording?
I did.
Thank you. Okay, good morning. I hope everyone's getting ready for a wonderful Thanksgiving this week. And is either having guests or being a guest at a relative or friend. And we're going to continue. We were talking about prayer and healing. Last time we had looked at this article that was written by Rabbi Eli Confer, and he talked about how about prayer and the story in the Torah where we have Moses praying for Miriam for healing. I sort of tacked this on because I thought this was an important quote by Harold Kushner, who, as you know, has extensively written about some of these issues, and he makes the point, says people who pray for miracles usually don't get miracles. You know, we've all prayed for things that we would like to see happen and did not happen. But people who pray for courage, for strength to bear the unbearable, for the grace to remember what they have left instead of what they have lost, very often find their prayers answered. Their prayers help them tap hidden reserves of faith and courage that were not available to them before. So here we have another approach when we're talking about prayers, and certainly prayers for healing fall under this rubric. Rabbi Kushner is very much looking in the naturalistic, materialistic world, shall we say, trying to say, well, what is it? How is it that we can pray for things, and then we pray for someone to heal, and that person is not healed? Happens all the time, sadly, and we know that's what happens. So he's trying to say, well, let's move the focus from the expectation that your prayer will heal to other effects that the prayer might have. And you can read his books, and he, of course, talks about this extensively within his books about what is it that the prayer does to the person who prays. And he talks about grace for what they have left, remember what they have left, tap hidden reserves of faith and courage. So there he sees ways in which we can say, prayer is effective, but not in the way that we say, we say, oh, my prayers are answered, meaning the person was healed. But what happens, of course, when that does not happen? So he's looking for, he has, again, does that mean that the prayers were worthless or useless? No, he's trying to find ways in which they are valuable. Okay, comments, questions about Rabbi Kushner? Okay, so let us move on. Stop the share. And I came across one other interesting article about prayers and healing, which I thought I'd bring here. Okay. Now, again, can prayer help us heal? Now, notice that, again, we look at the title, can prayers help us heal? Not can prayers always heal, or can prayers make healing occur? Help us heal. And this is written by Peggy Sarlin, who is, I thought I had her. Well, here, sorry, don't have it there, but I think she talks about, here it is, medical director of Pittsburgh Steelers, okay, and the world-class neurosurgeon, Dr. Joseph Maroon, has seen his share of frightened patients, and he's found that most effective way to calm a patient before surgery is to pray. If a patient is willing, Dr. Maroon will take his hand and quietly say, Today is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I have to say, I have a particular fondness for that biblical verse as well. Some of you may recognize that it's in the Hallel. Zeh hayom asa Adonai nagil v'nismecha vo. I think it's a great verse. I was even once on a subway, and okay, sometimes you're on a subway and there's somebody with a Bible open quoting biblical verses. Have any of you had that experience? I have. On more than one, and I actually remember a woman sitting across from me with her Bible out, and she just quoted that verse. And with the Lord's help, let's get you back to health, your family, and your life. Prayer takes 30 seconds, but Dr. Moran says it's profound. Can see the stress melting away. After surgery, the most common comment he gets is, doctor, I just want to thank you for saying that prayer. So again, we're looking in the more naturalistic, pragmatic world as to, is there something that prayer does? And he points out patients facing surgery have sky-high levels of cortisone, the stress hormone. I'm sure many of us can relate to that. And high cortisol levels can reduce wound healing, prolong hospital stays, and increase complications. So here again, unlike where Rabbi Kushner is trying to say there are psychological, and really we could talk about psychological and spiritual effects of prayer, here he's literally talking about, frankly, very specific physical changes. Prolonged exposure to excessive cortisone can corrode your brain. So he's talking about how stress, since life is stressful, prayer can help. MRI brain scans have shed light on the scientific underpinning of prayer's power. When people pray, the regions of the brain dealing with self-reflection and self-soothing light up, while the regions linked to taking action are quieted. Prayer also stimulates the release of happy hormones like oxytocin that inspire feelings of trust and belonging. So here's a question as to maybe there is that for the person who is undergoing a medical procedure. While private patient prayers often common comfort, prayers in a faith community. So let's move from, okay, I'm about to have an operation and prayer can soothe me. Prayer can perhaps help some things happen in my body that will soothe me. But what about prayers in a faith community, as we're all, of course, familiar with? People who pray together forge strong bonds that help them navigate the storms of life. Numerous studies have found that loneliness is a killer and that people who regularly attend religious services are more optimistic, enjoy better health, and live longer. Okay, so, I see that many of the people who are in this class right now are regular attendees at religious services.
Hope that works.
Yeah, well, that's one of the, talking about what is it that encourages a good or a happy, fulfilled life, having a spiritual dimension and having a community are very clearly related to that.
Right.
Having good friends, being grateful, helping other people, all of these aspects are clearly correlated to better life or a happier life, or even one could say a more successful life. And this is something I'd never heard of. People in the blue zones, the areas of the world where the most people who live 100 or older, you hear about, they eat the Mediterranean diet, or they walk every day they walk somewhere, right? You've heard of these things, right? There's only one blue zone in the United States, Loma Linda, California, home to a Seventh-day Adventist community of all things, right? Like their blue zone counterparts in Okinawa, Sardinia, Ikaria, and Nicoya, wherever they are. I'm not sure where some of these places are. The Seventh-day Adventists eat a healthy diet, incorporate exercise into their daily routines, have strong families, and pray together. Right? what's the significance? It reduces stress. So now here's another interesting aspect that when we look at Jewish tradition, the Jewish ritual of mourning. Mourners must recite the Kaddish prayer, but the prayer can only be said with a minyan. So the community surrounds the mourner, providing companionship, support, food, help with daily tasks, and love, right? We've all been to Shiva minyans, and we can see this. Instead of the crushing burden of grieving alone, the mourner connects with friends, family, and community in a prayer ritual that helps the stress hormones subside and eases the slow return to normal life. I've certainly heard people say this. Actually, many people sometimes say the worst time is the day after the Shiva is over, when the mourner is no longer being surrounded by those who come for the Shiva and for the minyan. When prayer is set to music, the brain circuits really start humming. Again, that's another question. We talked before, why is it that so much more emphasis on praying for healing today in services? And we could also ask that there's a greater emphasis on music, communal music, right? There's always been an emphasis on music in Jewish prayer. Some of us can, if we can go back some generations, remember the great Chazanim, right? Yossi Rosenblatt and such. But now the emphasis is everybody is involved in singing, communal singing. Singing unleashes a joyful cascade of activity in the brain, planning, organization, memory, etc. Singing also releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical, thereby encouraging healthy emotions like bonding and empathy. You imagine a clergy person, so let's get up with that dopamine. But the reality is, and I think it is a reality, is that one of the reasons that communal singing, I mean, you can argue against me, is so popular is, again, that people in the pews want to feel personally just more connected to the spirit, to the religion, to each other, and having these changes internally just encourages that. And I would argue, just as we talked last time, why is that? That's a big change in prayer. Okay. Singing, form of natural therapy, lifts our mood, gives our brains networks a workout, and provides substantial neuroprotective benefits. So joining your local choir, but not only joining your local choir, having a service in which there is a lot of communal singing, which has become a very important part. I mentioned before. I think I mentioned before. Just go. If you go on Friday night, and those of you who Zoom on Friday night, actually I do, go to see what's going on at Central Synagogue. They're all singing along. I assure you, 60 years ago at Central Synagogue, they were not doing that. I assure you that Temple Emmanuel in Manhattan 60 years ago did not have a bunch of musicians on the bima, and BJ, of course, the great example that only started, I'm not sure how many years ago, but that became, of course, a great model for many synagogues around the country. Okay. Perhaps one of the most important gifts is prayer. It awakens a sense of gratitude. Your brain actually changes when you express and act on feelings of gratitude. Says another physician, I think gratitude is the antidote to the detrimental effects of stress, right? Somehow we've lost that. When I talk about brain health, I speak about the power of prayer and spirituality, says a clinical neuropsychologist at the University of Pittsburgh. And afterwards, people will come over to me and whisper, thank you for talking about a higher being in prayer. So here's an argument being made. We have several arguments that we've seen about prayer and healing. Rabbi Kushner pointing out, it doesn't work if work means that God does what you want God to do. But it has benefits for the psyche. And here we're hearing that not only has benefits for the psyche, but the physiological chemical makeup of the brain and the body has beneficial effects from prayers. I really have to tell you, I was very impressed with the blue zones that have that effect. Okay, any comment on this article? Rini?
Well, I would like to say that I totally agree with the fact that prayer in community and singing has a very positive effect. As a matter of fact, last Friday night when I went to shul, we go Friday and Saturday, and there are different people who go Friday and different people who go Saturday. We
Yes,
have
I'm
friends
more
who
than
only
aware
go
of that.
Friday and only go, so we go both nights. But it's a short service, about an hour, and it's all singing, sometimes with musicians. But I walked into shul and I said to Ted, you know, when I get here, I feel happy. And that's exactly what this article is saying. It's that the prayer just it relaxes you. Friday, you know, it's the end of the week. It could be stressful, and all the singing with the community actually does have an effect on me. It makes me feel very happy. It's
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Jack, good to see you tonight, this afternoon, morning. Hope you're doing okay. Yeah, so I think that's the case. And you know, you hear the melodies, and I would argue that a fair number of the Friday night melodies are, shall we say, mellow and happy, you know. They run in those modes of trying to calm you and get you joyful. And that's, I think, one of the what we've seen again in American Jewish life, a place like the Central Synagogue or BJ are really models that have been replicated, or at least attempted to be replicated in various parts of the country. And why that they are so popular is that, you know, it used to be if you wanted to not go to services and listen to a service, you tuned into WQXR at 5:30 in the afternoon on Friday, and you got the service from Temple Emmanuel. And that was an old-fashioned, formal, classical Reform service. One of my high school friends, Rabbi David Posner, was the rabbi there. But now, if you want to tune into a service, you can turn on the TV, and if you have cable, you can get Central Synagogue. Or if you have a computer, you can go to the other ones. And those are the ones that are now are popular. Okay. Any comment or question before we move on?
You know, Rabbi, there was a big article in the Hadassah magazine this month about the one of the
Yeah.
rabbi at Central Synagogue.
Yeah.
You know, the one, the Oriental lady. It was a
Angela
terrific article.
Buckdahl, whose mother is an Asian American.
Right, right.
Yeah, and by the way, she's both a trained cantor and a trained rabbi.
Yes.
She has both degrees. And actually, she's on sabbatical. So if you go there, they have these two other cantors who also are extremely good. But she has really pioneered that and made Central Synagogue. Can you imagine a synagogue with a waiting list for membership? I'm sorry, we can't accept your membership.
3,400 people,
Yeah.
3,400 families, I
Right,
think,
and a
of
waiting list.
people.
Yeah, a waiting list. So that shows you, I think, the fact that that type of service and feeling is resonating so much in many people, and it's wonderful to see. You know, we always talk. There's a lot of doom and gloom in the Jewish community about certain aspects of Jewish life, and we understand that. But here's really a bright, shining example, and that is there are a lot of places where that has become certainly more common. We're finding ways, you know, it's obviously you can't replicate some central synagogues. The Upper East Side of Manhattan
Right.
has has many advantages, but you can certainly try to find ways of using what is successful there. Okay. All right, so let's then go on to there it is. Okay, we're going to go there, and we're going to go here. Okay, and the last text that we're going to talk about, I mean, this may sound odd, although as a rabbi, I have been asked this question on more than one occasion. It's a teshuvah, you know, a rabbinic response by members of the Committee of Jewish Law and Standards of the conservative movement, obviously recent, May 2023, year and a half ago. 19 to 0 with one abstention. Abstends Rabbi Rachel Softman. I don't know that rabbi. You know, I'm I'm getting older, and even when I look at all the people who are on the committee, honestly, I only know about half of them, maybe a little bit more. Okay, yeah, a little bit more than half, but there more than a few names of people I'm not familiar with. But obviously, but that type of vote indicates that this was very heartily approved of. And it's not just going to ask that question. You know, yes, we do have that question. How long should the Misha Barak list be, right? I mean, Misha Barak list, if, you know, there are synagogues where there's a written list and the rabbi reads the names. Have you been in synagogues where that list seems to go on for a long time? Yeah, that could happen. So what do you do? But not only that, this teshuvah is going to deal with some other questions, which we'll see. Questions about praying for people who are terminally ill, praying for people who are chronically ill. You know, there are people in our, I can easily name a few names of several people in our congregation who are chronically ill. Hopefully they'll be able to live as good as they can with their chronic illness, but they have chronic, and there are a lot of chronic illnesses out there. You know, people with Crohn's disease, people who are recovering from certain types of other illnesses. So should they be permanently on the Refuah Shlema list? Is there a point where you should not be on there? Or maybe, as we'll see in this teshuvah, you know, we talk about Refuah HaNefesh or Refuah HaGuf, you know, with the traditional prayer for healing talks about a total healing, right? We're praying that you should have a full healing of mind, body, and spirit. There's some people that's just not going to happen, right? So is there a possibility that we want to align the words of the prayers for healing with the reality of people who are ill? So in other words, it's not just how long do you stay on the list, it's that they're going to go into other areas where we do want to think about aligning what we, you know, because we would like to align what we say in prayer with reality of those who are in our congregations to show our concern in a realistic way. Okay, so let's begin. Here's the clear question. What guidance can traditional Jewish sources offer about when one should not pray for someone who is ill? What about mental, right? Some people have mental illnesses that are not going to go away, that are permanent, that it can perhaps be managed. Terminal, right? What do you do? What do you say to pray for someone who clearly is terminal or chronic? When should we stop including someone's names in prayers for healing because they have crossed the threshold from illness to health? You know, I will get to this later. I was actually asked that question. I actually responded to that question in one of my rabbinic internet lists. When should we stop praying for someone's healing because it cannot be reasonably expected? Okay, these are real questions that come up in synagogues and in communities, and I'm really very glad to see that the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards is trying to come up with something realistic. Okay, so they give an example. Rabbi Graber, is he's on the committee, I think? No? Okay. Anyway, wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. He prayed for her recovery before her surgeries and during her chemo and radiation, but it was unclear when to stop. Her hair was growing back. Her strength was returning. She still had a port. I had a port for 6 months, and she was still getting infusions every 3 weeks. And even when these were done, effects lingered, and they carried the fear of cancer's return. Yeah, I can relate, as you can imagine, I can relate to a lot of what they're saying here. Cancer is one of the, right, what are the other illnesses? Long COVID, right? Some people get COVID and the after effects go on months or years, right? Right, we talk about the mitzvah of visiting the sick, and in the traditional sources, one who visits the sick and does not pray for him has not fulfilled the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick. You can pray in any language, right? I always, when people have called me and said, Rabbi, add this person to the Refuah Shlema list, I said, please, I will do so. Tell me the Hebrew name, but please note that you too, anyone can pray for someone who is ill. Recognition that healing is not only physical, but emotional and spiritual, right? Pray for refuat nefesh u'refuat haguf, complete healing of soul and body. Okay, so there is we have many examples within our tradition of people praying to God for healing. We had we're going to read some of these we just read recently in the Torah portions. In Genesis 20, Abraham and Sarah ran into Gerar. Abraham said Sarah's his sister, not his wife. The king, Avimelech, has Sarah brought to him. God visits him in a dream, say he will die because of Sarah. Abraham is forgiven, Torah says. And Abraham then prayed to God, and God healed, right? V'yirpa et, he healed him and his wife and his female servants so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed fast every womb of the house of Avimelech because of Sarah, the wife of Abraham. Well, that certainly was a very clear concern for his household of having children. And then in chapter 21, we taught right after this, God remembered Sarah. Because remember, Sarah was also infertile. She didn't have children until she was much older. This section is juxtaposed to teach you that whoever prays for mercy on behalf of another, when that person himself is also in need of that very thing for which he prays, will receive a favorable response from God. Now, I'm not sure we're going to say that literally, but the point that the text here is trying to make is that it is a favorable, in some way, the fact that you prayed for someone else, right? While this teaching seems to argue for the instrumental or utilitarian value of prayer, and we saw that with Rabbi Kushner in that last text we saw, I prayed because my prayers will be answered. We can understand the teaching more broadly as telling us that praise for others are praiseworthy and of inherent value. Okay, so let's take a look, and he's going to start of saying the Misha Barak, address those for healing, discuss what healing might exactly mean, how to determine when to remove them, and then we'll see that they give you 4 optional Misha Barak prayers that speak about different types of healing. Okay, how do we pray for someone who is ill? Now we looked at that article about Moshe praying for Sarah, right? When we say I'll say a Misha Barak, Misha Barak means may the one who is blessed. Several types of prayers, right? When you're visiting someone, our liturgy, we talked about, Rabbi Confer talked about 2 ways. Communal prayer, the rabbi or the gabbai recites the liturgy, then reads a list of names kept by the community, often the synagogue administrative staff. I used to keep a list of names. Actually, I typed it out and I kept it on the bima, so it was right there. After which people in the congregation can offer additional names. And then we go around, signal to people in the congregation that is their turn, and then after we hear all the names, we conclude the prayer. Our custom is, yes, the rabbi asks for names and he goes around, and then we finish the prayer. Of course, individual prayers, including the people's name in the 8th blessing of the Amida. If you remember, we talked about that in the individual Amida, the silent Amida, that said daily there's a prayer for healing, and there is in our Siddur the option of praying for an individual. Most commonly we use the person's name and his mother's name, right? So if the Chola is named Yaakov and his mother is Rivka, we'd say Yaakov ben Rivka. Using the mother's name is based on a situation described in Talmud. Some of them talk about this, many of which have to do with associating motherhood with mercy and healing. I know it's a little stereotypical, but I I think it does express something important. According to Rabbi Avoda Yosef, if one does not know the mother's name, one may use the father's name. In this, our egalitarian context, using both parents' names is preferred. Actually, we continue, I know in our congregation, I continue to use the mother's name, and sometimes people don't know the Hebrew names. So I say, use the English name, right? That works as well. Okay. Who should we be praying for? Okay. Now, in this teshuvah, they're going to try to understand who is it. Basically, how sick do you have to be, and should you be on the refuah shlema list? And interesting, they begin upon exiting a bathroom. One says, and there's a blessing. You praise God who formed the human being in wisdom and created many orifices and cavities. It is revealed and known before the throne of your glory that were one of these to be ruptured or blocked, it would be impossible to survive and stand before you. Well, we certainly know that if one of those is blocked or ruptured, there's a real problem. What should one conclude at the end of that blessing? Blessed God, the healer of the sick. Rather, one say, healer of all flesh. One or another rabbi says, who performs wondrous deeds. Therefore, let us say both of them. At the end of this prayer, healer of all flesh, who performs wondrous deeds. Okay, so normal bodily functions are not illness, right? We should pray for whoever asks us to, or whomever we think needs healing. Do we need consent from the person who is ill? What do you think about that? Do you need consent from the person who is ill?
No.
Yeah, Rini?
You can always ask them if they want you to say it. Some people tell you that they want you.
But
They
have
would
you ever
like
had a
you to say it.
situation where someone said, "Don't say it"? I've had
Yes.
situations
I
where
don't
people have said,
remember.
I did have a
Yes.
situation.
Yeah, go ahead, Rini.
Well, in our shul, we don't have a list. If you want to say a mishaber, you have to show up. So we don't have a long list that we read. But our rabbi stresses that before you say a person's name out loud, you should ask their permission because they may not want the public to know that they're ill. But she says, if you want to say a mishabera for someone, you can say it quietly. And my former dentist, who unfortunately did die, I asked him if I could say a mishabera for him. And he said yes, but please don't say it out loud.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think you should.
We have a
We're
member.
emphasizing consent. Ed, go ahead.
We have a member that does not like if you say a Mishabara out loud for them. But I have one other point I'd like to make. When we're talking about, do you say it for a terminally ill person, or where illness goes to health? I mean, in this day and age, a terminally ill person may be terminally ill, but next year there may be a cure. So they're no longer terminally ill. So in essence, you're praying for a cure for that person. A perfect example, they had that on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago. This one girl has a very rare form of leukemia, very rare, and it was terminal, but she managed to live like 3 or 4 years. And through gene therapy, they gave her one shot and she was totally cured of a very rare form of leukemia.
So there's no question, and let me say this very directly, that doctors at best can give you at times somewhat of a sense of your odds, right? Based upon the past. But as we say about the stock market and stocks, the past does not predict future activity, right? So it is true that there are people, but on the other hand, Ed, would you agree that there is a point for many people where they are clearly terminal, and even that very rare, and it rare, but it does happen, healing is really just not going to happen. There are cases like that.
Yes, but there are family members and friends and everything that don't want to own up to that. And
Oh, yes.
they saying it in the hopes that the outcome is wrong,
I mean, we'll talk.
that the person is
Right.
going to survive.
That's a good point. All right, let me go first back to this first point, the question of consent, and then I want to go back to the second point. As far as consent, I think that, as we've pointed out, it's very important. On more than one occasion, I have had people say to me, "Say my name in Hebrew and not out loud in Hebrew, not in English. That way, people won't know who you're talking about." That
Right.
I have had that happen on more than one
Right.
occasion, and as Rini pointed out, or as other of you have, you certainly can say it quietly and no one hears it. Yeah, sometimes people, you know, I'll talk of personal experience. I was, as you know, I was diagnosed with actually I was diagnosed with a very early form of blood illness in 1989, and between 1989 and 2015, I was not on any refuah shlema list, but I clearly had a form of what is called blood cancer that usually doesn't progress. Well, guess what? But during those years, I never asked or thought that it would be appropriate to be on the refuah shlema list because the odds are that it wouldn't happen. I would also say for a lot of people with, particularly with cancer, maybe other diseases as well, the person who has the disease has every right to determine whether he or she wants that illness to be public. And we just saw that with Prince William's wife. I'm blanking on
Kate.
the name.
Kate.
Kate, right. Kate for quite a while, right? Did not say anything. And then I said to her, good for her. It's up to the person who has the illness, as frankly I did, to decide at what point do you want the illness to be public. So that I think that's an important point, that the autonomy and the choice of the person who has the illness to make the illness public is purely in their hands and no one else's hands. The second question about we'll talk. We're going to get to the terminal illness question. We're going to get to in a few minutes. That is an important question, and as Ed pointed out, it's not always clear. That's true. Unfortunately, sometimes it is. And how do you? Those are two different situations, but we'll talk about how to get to them. Okay, consent. All right. The Mishnah indicates that whether a person is sick or not is left up to the medical experts. That's an interesting question because sometimes the medical experts may not agree. In the rabbinic discussion about fasting on Yom Kippur, the rabbi's use of the statement, "The heart knows its own bitterness," right? That's a statement from the Talmud, was not meant merely to put the patient on par with the experts. Rather, the patient possesses relevant knowledge and should be able to participate in the decision. Conveys that the patient possesses knowledge about his own condition that is totally different from an expert's knowledge about it. This is the question of Yom Kippur. Should you fast or not on Yom Kippur? Whose advice is primary? Is it the doctor or is it the patient? Right? And they may disagree in either direction, right? In the case of talking about Yom Kippur, if a person is allowed to define themselves as not ill, they may fast on Yom Kippur and put their health in jeopardy. One can assume this is the reasoning behind the Mishnah's ruling to deny patients autonomy in determining whether or not they are ill, i.e., if the face it, there are some people who will say, "I'm not sick," right? And no doctor's going to tell me if I'm sick. And what if the doctor says you are sick and you better fast, but the patient says he doesn't want to fast, right? When it comes to individual prayer, we may say that the stakes are lower. In other words, by the way, I see. I don't know if he answers that question here. By the way, the ruling is, of course, that number one, on Yom Kippur, if the doctor says you can't fast and you think you can't fast. You have to follow the doctor on that. On the other hand, if the doctor says, yeah, probably you could fast, but you feel, no, I can't, then you don't. All right, those again, having personally dealt with these issues over the years, that's the guidance I offer. Okay. When it comes to individual prayer, we may say that the stakes are lower. We seek to determine who decides when a person is ill and should thereupon become the object of our prayers. That's a question. And they conclude, if I care about a person and I'm worried about their health, even if they do not see themselves as sick, there are, right? You may know some people who are very reluctant to place themselves in that category about sick. My individual prayers on their behalf, even without their knowledge or consent, can hardly be seen to be harmful. But when it comes to communal prayers, in other words, I have a friend who I know is ill but doesn't want to admit it. In my private prayers, I can pray for their healing. But what about communal prayers? If a patient does not define themselves as ill, and we include them in a communal prayer, we are denying a patient's agency in how they define themselves and risk embarrassing them. One concept that should guide our thinking, therefore, is a person should only be the object of communal prayers with their consent. Okay? For this reason, community members should not call the synagogue office and place people on the public Misha Barak list without knowledge and consent to the person who is being prayed for. Okay? It seems to me logical and the right decision. As I was talking to some of my colleagues about this, and I think this is what many rabbis try to do. Okay, chronic and mental illness. Some people suffer from mental illnesses that are never going away. That best there are certain illnesses, physical illnesses also, that best can be managed, but are not going to disappear. Okay. The prayer asks for refuat hanefesh or refuat haguf, for a full healing, right? But there are others who have suggested that chronic and mental illnesses are not best served through traditional prayer. That's an interesting question. You say the name of a person and you know that they have a chronic illness, be it mental or physical, and we're praying for them to be fully healed, and it's just not going to happen. So is that good or bad?
Rabbi, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Our rabbi doesn't say complete healing. She says enough healing.
Okay. So one solution is changing the wording.
Yeah, which I like that, because some people can't be healed, but they can manage.
Okay. And something that's the best you can hope for.
Yep.
Right. There's certain chronic conditions that I know that I very well know that the best the doctors can do is manage, maybe slow it down, maybe not. And so they give you an example, Rabbi Julie Pelk, who says, I think of my coworker with diabetes, chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic clinical depression, lupus, ulcerative colitis, and someone with HIV, right? I think of my own incomplete recovery. To pray for complete healing for those whose ailments cannot or will never be completely healed seems audacious, even offensive. My coworkers, colleagues, friends, and family and I will negotiate medications, medical appointments, dietary needs, and fears throughout our lives. We will face unexpected side effects, professional and personal repercussions of our special needs, and stigma from many well-being strangers every day. Our everyday reality is of one of incomplete health, yet we are not entirely sick either, right? So to pray for the complete healing of the body and spirit is to misjudge the realities of people's lives. To understand or redefine healing as making peace with one's fate is to alter the meaning of the prayer and may also serve to ignore a specific kind of suffering and its ever-changing realities. And here's one suggestion, let's change the prayer and say that we're hoping that one has making peace with one's fate. And she said, yeah, I don't know about that. So she has a new prayer. Let's move. Let's see what she says. Let's go to the index and see what Rabbi Pelk suggests. We're gonna go down. Okay, index once, Rabbi Pelk. Okay. Now it starts as Misha Berach Avoteinu Avram Yitzchak Yaakov Hu Yivarek. Hu Yivarek. What's missing? V'yirapeh. Who should bless? The word and heal has been removed, right? Misha Berach Avoteinu Avram Yitzchak Hu Yivarek V'yirapeh. No, just got the name. Go into the English. This is the Hebrew. Okay. Bless, strengthen her heart, raise up her hand with the blessings you give to Yaakov, to Yonatan and David, to Daniel the prophets, to the mother of Peretz and Zarach, to Tamar, daughter of David, to Miriam the prophetess, and to Naomi. In other words, giving a series of biblical context. May God give him her grace, compassion, and loving kindness, love, harmony, peace, and companionship. Speedily, Adonai our God, hear our voices, not speedily heal them. Take up our prayers. Watch over his life, force, spirit, and soul. Oh, that's a little, okay. With respect to your power, your loving kindness, and your great compassion, behold, we say to him or her, be strong and of good courage. Spread over us all your shelter of peace, and let us say, Amen. So, what do you think of that? Comments? If you are suffering, or maybe you are, I know some of you are, I mean, frankly, I am. I have chronic kidney disease, so I know about some chronic conditions. Is that a satisfying prayer? Is this better than Refuah Shlema? Yeah, Rini, what do you think?
I like my rabbi's way, I must say.
What don't you like about this one?
Because it doesn't really acknowledge, it could be anybody. I mean, it's not really a prayer for healing. I don't think it's just, you want everyone to have grace, compassion, loving kindness, love, harmony, peace, and so on, and courage. But this is specifically, we know we know you're ill. I say a prayer every week for my cousin who's doing quite well. And I asked her, should I take her off my list? And she said, no, keep me on it because I'm chronically ill and who knows what'll happen. So this doesn't address that. But for her, enough healing works because she's functional. So that's,
Right. So this prayer has taken out the word healing. It has removed the word healing, right? Does healing appear? I don't believe so. I'm looking at it again just to be sure. So the question is it specific enough for the people who are either having chronic illnesses or are in recovery of an illness, and the recovery and people sometimes are in recovery which may or may not be complete, right? Some people do recover after a period of recovery, and some people relapse or get worse. So it's a good question that you raise. Is this specific enough? I mean, it attempts to take, on the one hand, it takes away, we're not wishing for you to be totally cured. That's not going to happen. On the other hand, it doesn't really feel that it's speaking. And anyone else comment on this one? Okay, so let's go back. We're going to look at a few others. This is just the first one. Give me a moment. Almost there. Oh, okay. Wait a second. Nope, not there yet. Gotta get to Rabbi Pelk. Here we go. Rabbi Pelk. Okay. So, okay. Mental illness. Prayers in not psychological appendix 2. Recent mental health crisis has also led to the creation of a new Misha Barak prayers for those with mental health challenges. These prayers, so now we have a prayer for someone with a mental health. So let's see what we think about this one. Okay, Appendix 2. Okay, Misha Barak Avotenu Asher Kara Lano Yisrael. Okay, so this is really we don't even have the who you varek for your pet in the first line. That's gone. May the one who blessed our ancestors and named us Yisrael, right? Yisrael, right? We're called B'nai Yisrael. Our people are called Yisrael. Our nation is called Yisrael. That's our name. As it is said, for you have striven with divine beings. That's when Jacob wrestles with the angel. His name is changed from Jacob to Yisrael. Okay. So talking about the struggle. Bless and heal. Now we do add the word heal. Those among us who struggle with mental well-being. May it be your will that they acknowledge their own strength and resilience, treat themselves with forgiveness and patience, and find help, compassion, and resources when they need them. And may the Blessed Holy One grant those of us who aren't experiencing mental health issues the strength, resilience, and capacity to listen without judgment with intention, and the ability to notice when others are struggling. May it be your will that we create communities that accept, uplift, and support those among us who are struggling now, speedily, and in a time soon to come. And let us say, Amen. Okay, this was specifically written for people with mental illness. By the way, notice what it does. It also expands. Not only are we praying for the person who has mental illness, but we're praying for us as individuals and us as a community to want to be sympathetic, right? Sometimes people with mental health do not receive sympathy. Oh, just get over it, or and we're hoping that both the individual and the community will both recognize someone who has a mental health problem and help that person with the resources that they need. Okay, any also comments about this one? Does it work? Do you like it? Not like it? Okay, Rini, what do you think?
Well, it's okay because it doesn't seem to have any names announced. The other ones.
Why is that?
Oh, you don't want to point out people who have mental issues, psychological issues, or bipolar or whatever it is. So a general prayer is okay as long as you don't mention names.
That's great point. This prayer has no names, right? And we are still living in a society where being told, a public proclamation that you have mental illness is seen negatively. It's seen as a weakness. It's seen as a personal, oh, it's not because the chemicals in your brain are just not messed up. It's because you don't have the strength to overcome it, right? There's still that negative connotation that people with mental health issues have. That's a good point. That's a good point. The lack of names. Any other comments? Notice again that what they've tried to do in this prayer, talk about the individuals, grant those of us who aren't experiencing mental health issues, that we should notice when others are struggling, which again is an interesting, why is that there? Because often people ignore it. And notice that it also says we create communities that accept, uplift, and support because of the specific nature that people see mental health issues as personal weaknesses and failures, as opposed to, if you get cancer, okay, we don't see that as a personal failure. But if you have mental health issues, sometimes we see that as a personal weakness and failure. Okay. All right, let's go back to the text. Okay, let's go down. Okay, that's and let's see if we have. We'll just have time to begin to touch on this. Sorry, I'm missing it. Okay, we're chronic and mental. Okay. About that. Okay. Terminally ill. Tefillat shav. In this teshuva, they're going to say, if you're praying for someone who is terminally ill, and yes, bearing those few individuals who, yes, sometimes do come back, is this a vain prayer? You shouldn't be praying for something that is against the laws of nature. That is not going to happen, right? So we'll just take a look at that, and then I think it's still enough time for that. When is the Mishabach not appropriate? And one who cries out over the past in an attempt to change that which has already happened, it is a vain prayer. One whose wife is pregnant, and he says, may it be God's will that my wife gives birth to a boy. Yeah, this is before we would know for sure, right? This is a vain prayer. It's either a boy or a girl, and nothing you say is going to change that. One who was walking on the path home and heard the sound of a scream in the city and says, may it be God's will that it is not from my house. Uh-oh, there's a problem in somebody's house. I hope it's not, I'm praying it's not my house. Well, it's already is your house, already isn't your house. And you can't change that after the fact. So the question is, and we'll pick this up next time, is praying for healing, adding a person whose name to the Refuah Shlema list who is terminal, is that not a vain prayer? And maybe we should also be looking at an option for that. We'll take a look at that next week. Okay. Kind of a little downer here at the end of the class, I admit. But let's share. That's where we are. Okay. Comments or questions before we conclude?
Rabbi, we used to have a member of the center who moved down to Maryland because when her grandson was born, he had many disabilities. He was going to have many disabilities, and she wanted to move. They lived down there. She moved down after her husband died to be with them. When her daughter was pregnant, she was told that it was not going to be good, that he would be disabled for his whole life. As a matter of fact, when he was born, the doctors told her he would not live to be 5 years old. He is now 15 years old. He has many disabilities, but he attends a special school, but he keeps going. They keep after it, and he keeps going. They have no idea how long he's going to live.
Right.
But the doctor said he wouldn't see his 5th birthday.
Right. So here's an example of someone with a chronic illness. A chronic illness, in this case, where the doctors cannot predict at all how it will proceed, how, they don't know. So again, that question that we raised, is it appropriate to pray for a full healing for someone who has that lifelong chronic condition? Or as some of these prayers that Rini has suggested, maybe we need a different type of formulation for what we're praying, right? I mean, that's a good example of this question of what do we do about chronic illnesses. Okay. Any other comment before we leave? All right. We'll have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Good to see
you.
You too.
Thank you all
Thank you,
for being
Rabbi.
here.
Yeah.
Go
Thank
back to
you.
your either preparations or getting ready to
One last comment on Thanksgiving.
Yes, please.
I don't know if I mentioned this last year, maybe it's too late now, but the Livingston ShopRite still gives free kosher turkeys for their $400 reward.
Wow.
I thought, does our ShopRite still do that?
No, you get a chicken.
You get a chicken.
get a
A
Okay.
kosher chicken. They'll give a kosher frozen chicken.
A kosher frozen chicken. I think I
Right,
think I
right,
remember that. We kind of skipped.
They still
kind of
Right.
skipped that.
they still give the kosher frozen turkey, which every other shop right discontinued 10 years ago.
that's right,
Right,
that's
that's right.
right.
Okay, so let's hear it for
So
Livingston.
I give
All
my
right.
daughter my phone number, and she uses my card, and she picks up the turkey,
Okay.
the $75 turkey for free.
Good. Well, enjoy your turkeys and the leftovers and the
Tastes,
family and guests.
it
And
tastes even better when it's free.
okay. But let's hope
By
all
the
of your
way,
turkeys may
speaking
all
of
your turkeys be good.
well, speaking of turkeys, Trader Joe's has the best tasting glatt kosher turkey I ever had. We've been buying it for a few years. They only have it at Thanksgiving, and
Okay.
it's fresh. It's not frozen, and it's the best, better than Empire. It's delicious.
Okay,
Yeah,
there,
we
there
we
you
we
go.
bought it a couple of times too. Yeah.
And there's a guy who does free range heritage turkeys, kosher. Expensive, but supposedly good. See, they say eating a free range kosher heritage turkey is like having butter after you've eaten margarine all your life. But it costs. So whatever turkey you're having, please
Enjoy.
enjoy your friends and family. Be thankful that we've all made it to this point in our lives, and we are
That's
able
right.
to have the celebration with our families.
That's right. Thank you, Rabbi.
Hey, Rob.